I had two brothers, Linda Phipps and Larry Phipps, and they live here in Savoy, or did. They were younger. I lived in Savoy all my life. Lived here on the mill pond, had a great childhood, always had people in my yard to play with, always people to swim with. Back then, when I was a child, the mill pond was open to the public, and we always had company. It was built in the late 1800s, and it was built by, it was a grant that was given for a feed mill. You know, they ground corn and wheat and stuff for the community or for the area. Well, I had one of the best childhoods you could ever imagine. I'd get up in the morning, put my swimsuit on, and head to the creek. And sometimes Mom wouldn't even see us till supper time. My dad and my uncle and my grandfather, there was a mill here, American Milling Company, and in 1960 we had a flood and it burned. And so then they moved the business to town. And then in 1975 my dad passed away, and so they sold the business. Mom would always, in the summertime when school was out, I had to wash windows. That was one of my jobs in the summertime. Most generally it was just staying out of her hair. You know, just going out and playing and just being a kid. And Dad was a traveler, and he always took us on a vacation. I went to the World's Fair and in Washington State. That was an exciting thing. Well, I was 14 when that happened. And but he just liked to travel and camp, and so those were our, you know, that's what we did. I started school in Farmington when I was first grade, and I went there all through till completed through the 8th grade. And then my 9th and 10th grade, I went to University High School. And then I came back to Farmington and graduated, went there my junior and senior year. Rank Carney, that lived up the road here, he was our bus driver. And all the kids in the neighborhood gathered over at the store and would catch the bus, and we'd go to school. And it was probably about, at least a 45 minute hour ride to school every day. My classmates were Wayne and Linda Brumley, Johnny Lossing, Gerald Tucker, Donnie Conduff. In fact, we had a small class reunion here in last month, and we got to get together with some of them. So we were a very close class. Well, Miss Brown was my first grade teacher, and she was very strict. If she caught you counting on your fingers, you might get a swat with the ruler, or she'd make you sit on your hands so you couldn't count, you know. But that didn't deter some of us. So, but anyway, she was very strict, very good teacher. 2nd grade was Mrs. Wiley. And that's where we learned to do cursive. And 3rd grade was Mrs. Beckett. 4th grade was Mrs. Kerr. 5th grade was Mrs. Blue. 6th grade was Mrs. Fowkes. And then after that we went to junior high, and 7th and 8th grade we just had a bunch of different teachers. Well, they didn't have softball as a sport, but we used to play it during recess, and I loved softball. But basketball was my main thing. I loved to play basketball, and I played basketball my junior and senior year. And from then on, I was a guard, and that's when we played 3-on-3. We had, 3 on one end of the court, 3 guards and 3 forwards, and anyway, it was, I loved it. I loved basketball. One of my coaches was Coach Beatty, and he was a good coach. and very kind of strict, I guess. But anyway, we had to run the bleachers in the old gym, and he kept us in shape. Well, I guess I have all good memories of Farmington. I liked school. I liked, of course, riding the bus. That was, and back then, I mean, when I even got into high school, I rode the bus. Even as a senior, we rode the bus. Only time I got to drive the car was when I had ball practice after school. And but other than that, we rode the bus every day. Small, and it seemed like there was a grocery store, the Whites, the Phillips grocery store. It was small. There wasn't near the stuff, the commercial business that it has now. It was just a very small town, and you knew everybody. Back then, there was only like 20, 22 people in our class, and everybody knew each other. All the parents knew each other, and they kept good track of you. So it was a lot different then than it is now. It was a different time because I didn't get to go to town and run around like they do now. I mean, very seldom did I ever get the car to go in town when I started driving. Just going to basketball games and just being involved that way. And here in the community, when I was a kid, we'd all get together and play kick the can and ante over, especially in the summer months when it was warm, or in the spring and fall. We were playing hide and seek, and I often wonder why or how in the world we kept from getting snake bit, because we were all over this place hiding in brush, under the mill, under the trucks, wherever, but we didn't. They'd get together and play cards. My dad loved to play pitch, and they would get together with his aunt and uncle, and Uncle Ben and Aunt Anna Phipps. They would get together and they would play cards at least one night a week. And my dad loved to dance, and so he would like to go to the Legion huts to dance, and Siloam, Lincoln, Prairie Grove, and that's what he liked to do. And as I got older, he would take me, and I liked it. So, but other than that, I mean, we were just out here 10 miles from town, so we just had to make our own entertainment, more or less. So, and TV, we had the first TV in Savoy. It was exciting. I mean, when I'd get off the bus, I would run to the house to make sure I got the TV first, because I wanted to watch American Bandstand. And my brothers wanted to watch cartoons. So, and then we had some neighbors that had never seen TV before, so they'd come in. They liked to watch TV. But yeah, and then after we got our TV, then other people around in the community started getting their TV. But all we had was an antenna. And so we'd pick up some of the, the local stations, 5 and, well, I guess mostly Tulsa stations. So, but it was exciting to get a TV. And it was black and white. Of course, no color until after I was married. There was no color TVs. I graduated in May, and I got married August 1st, 1964. And to Wayne Sims, and we were high school sweethearts, and we were married 52 plus years before he passed away in December the 30th, 2016. I have 2 children. Kelly lives next door, and Kirk lives in Lowell, and they graduated from Farmington. And I was there for them. Kind of hesitated going to work at the school because they were in school, but they kind of liked it. They kind of liked Mom being there for the most part. Well, Wayne and I had a business. We had bought Tipton's Garage up on 16, and we named it Wayne's, or we had a garage. And so we had that 2 years, and then Wayne did the bus repairs for Farmington schools. So the superintendent, Gilbert Bisher, wanted to make wanted a mechanic that could teach mechanics and also take care of the buses at school. So he offered Wayne a job as a bus mechanic and a teacher. And so then I was offered a job for a library aide. And so that's how my job started at the school. I started in the new round building, we called it, as a library aide, and I did that for 1 year. Then the next year, they sent me over to the high school because I was the only aide they had, so they shifted me around. And I was a study hall person that kept study hall. And I don't know, then I went from there to, they shipped me back to the elementary to be a migrant aide or a Title I aide. And I did that for several years. And then I got the opportunity to become the high school secretary for Mr. Lynch. And so I took that job, and I did that for a few years, and then I became the athletic director secretary. And I did that for, I don't know, 14 years or more. And then I went over to the superintendent's office, and that's where I stayed as accounts payable or whatever they had for me to do. And I retired there in 2004. And then Pat Bond and I job shared the accounts payable job for 5 years, and then in 2009 we retired permanently. Worked for him a couple of years before he became superintendent. And he was a great boss. You know, Randy, he was just kind of slow, easy going. But anyway, he was great to get along with, and he treated me well. So, but I had some other superintendents that were not quite so good as he was. Coach Holland he was a good boss. Of course, you know, he was always kind of gruff, but you just had to know how to work him. I would say he'll probably get a kick out of that if he hears this. But anyway, he was good to work for, and he knew what I could do and what I expected of him and what he expected of me. And so, but I had to keep all the athletic records, you know, and make sure that AAA was notified when we had a new kid come into a program or whatever. So I tried to do a good job. I worked for, when I first went into the office, it was Michael Gray. And then there was Mr. Wright. And then we worked, the superintendent now, Brian Law, yes. They were all really good superintendents. And we just, they took care of us. Just if the principal was out, I mean, if you had a child that come in that was in trouble, you just had to sit them down. A lot of times I tried to talk to them, you know, try to give them a little advice, but most of the time they didn't take it. But anyway, I mean, there was a lot of, you know, you had to, a lot of book work. I kept the accounts, the club accounts. I had to take care of all that. I mean, from the time I got there, from the time I left, you were busy all day long, and the time passed quickly. I just remember it was a great place to work and be with my kids. And I often said, when my kids get out of school, I'm retiring. That was it. But it was just, I had good hours. I was home at 3:30, 4 every day. My kids were all involved in sports, and it gave me time to get home, get supper, get them off to their activities. I was involved in Booster Club, and with me being at school, I took care of the concession stand. You know, I'd go right after school, put out all the candy, get everything set up for that. There were a lot of advantages of working at the school, being close to my kids, being involved in different things. I mean, I wouldn't trade those years for nothing. So it was a great place to work. When I started to work, I cleared about $199 a month. But I didn't work for the money. More, it was to supplement my husband's income, and money went farther back then. But I enjoyed my job, and every year I'd get a little raise, and from when I left, I was making decent money and had good benefits. I had sick days, I had vacation days. So I have no complaints. It was a great job, and plus, I ended up with a good retirement. Well, I had a lot of kids that were kids of people that I went to school with, and I don't know. I don't know. Tammy Shelley was one of them, or more. I had her in study hall, and we used to talk, and I don't know, it was just, there's so many kids that you were involved with that you just, Scott Beeks, he was my office aides. Every year we'd have office aides that would help us run and get absentees and do this, and you get close to them, and I don't know, there were just so many. There were just a lot of kids, and my kids, their friends, Jeff Oxford, Shelley Parsley, all those girls, Sherry Gardner, all those girls and guys, I mean, they were just like my kids. And so, and Sherry, when she sees this, she'll tell you, I made her, she had never missed a day of school. And so we had this plan that we were going to give her a big award when she graduated. And so guess what? Senior skip day came up. I wouldn't let her skip because that would have ruined the award that she would have got. She never missed a day of school in her whole 12 years. That was, to me, that was something else. Jeanette Robbins. She was the best home ec teacher that you would ever find. I mean, and the girls all respected her. She taught them so much different than it is now. And I know that all the girls that had her just loved her. Jean Anna Sellers, she was a business teacher. She was a big influence on a lot of people. Bob Eccles. And there were so many new teachers that come in that, that you had to kind of take under your wing and lead them, because especially the ones that were kind of around Coach Holland, he kind of, they kind of were kind of scared of him, but, he would intimidate them. But anyway, there were just so many of them. I just can't remember all of them, but they all treated me so well. And Miss McQuestion was there for years, and anyway, they were all Emma Banks. They were all just great teachers, and we all had a good time too. During the summertime, Miss McQuestion and Jean Ann Sellers and Jeanette, we'd all come out here. They'd all come out here, and we'd go swimming, and we'd spend some, personal time together. But they had some great teachers. I remember sitting in the high school. In fact, I was an aide, and looking across the field, across where IGA was and Sonic and all that. Remember thinking, it was that property was going to sell, and it was just a field. And then all of a sudden, you turn around, and then there's all these businesses that are, that are there. Well, another thing I thought about, was the taxation that the school was going to get. It was going to, improve the money that the school was going to get too, with all the businesses that were coming into town. So every time a new business come into town, we'd get kind of excited about it. I know that every year, well, after I got out of elementary and got up into junior high, where I could, kind of knew what was going on, there were a couple of years there that they just had to shut school down because they didn't have enough money to pay the teachers. So they just closed the doors, send us home. And that's when my mother decided that she was going to send us to Fayetteville to University High School, because that's where she graduated, and thought that we could get an education there. But then they closed my 10th grade, the end of my 10th grade year, and so I went back to Farmington, and I'm so glad that I got to go back to Farmington, because I got to play basketball, and that was my love, playing basketball. So I went back to Farmington my junior and senior year. When I was in elementary school, when I was an aide there, I was head of the Pee Wee basketball girls, and we had games, and of course back then it was, we coached 3-on-3. I mean, it wasn't full court basketball like it is now, but I had a whole group of girls, and I had, I had aides that helped. But anyway, it was a good time. Took up Saturday morning, and that's when we had our games. There's just been so many changes through the years, and I was so lucky that I got to be a part of all the growth, of most of the new buildings that are there now. I was there and was a part of. Now, I was Folsom Elementary. It was not there when I was there. I think they built that later, and the new high school. And so, but all the other buildings, I was there. It's not like it was when I first started at the school. When I first started at the school, I knew everyone. I knew the kids, I knew the parents. And then as I went through the system and ended up in the superintendent's office, by the time I left, I hardly knew anyone. The growth had really, there was a lot of kids, and a lot of newcomers come into the town. And, but, and that's what they wanted, was the small town atmosphere. And, but it's growing, and I don't know if that's good or bad. I feel like there's still a lot of people there that I knew that have grown up there and stayed there, and I just feel like that they just have made a difference in the city, it's just a great little town. That's about all I can tell you. I've seen a lot of growth from the time I started to school there till the time I left. I just so thankful that I had the opportunity to work at the school.